Hi, good morning. I wanted to thank AWAF for this opportunity so that I could explore the topic of 3D printing and affordability. So with that said, I will jump into the presentation. All right, so here we go. So I wanted to start off with like the dream that I had whenever I set upon this. So the dream to me is how can I make design affordable? And that's from the single family residential perspective. So I'm talking about like ADUs. I'm also thinking about the short-term housing that we've been seeing in LA, and also just scaling up that from some of the new state laws that have been passed so that you can densify single family lots. And what I'm really also like kind of thinking about is like that sweet spot between construction, design, and the price of that. So, and I wanted to just sprinkle on some more context from like my personality. And that's something that I contribute to like how I was brought up is this idea of MacGyvering. And if my dad saw this slide, he would laugh but cringe a little bit on the image on the left because I mean I love the way of engineering and just using whatever options you have at the time to find the solutions. So we'll move on. So I also wanted to talk about the goals that I set off from the beginning. And that was to think about the aesthetics of the final product, to think about the wall performance, the constructability, and then the cost savings. So I'll explain some of the design. So I just because of access that I had at the time, I picked a rural lot because I just because that's what I had available. But I will say that anything that I did at the rural lot very much applies to the city, and most of the work that I do is city work. So I'm very familiar with code. So I'll break down the process. So what I did particularly was in a warehouse on a gantry system. What we did is we pretty much built them like Lego blocks. And so they are able to then be picked up by a relatively common forklift and then put on, relatively accessible truck to then take to the site where you'll need the forklift to take off and you literally set it in place. It's kind of like precast concrete as well. So I'll also start to break down the form that I got to, and I would say that that was kind of pushed by aesthetics and wall performance. Specifically with the aesthetics is that I was really curious about, I mean, this is a machine product. How can I make it less machined? And also the idea of like, I can really push this machine. It's very similar to a desktop printer, so you can really start to get curves and push the limits of that. And I did want to try to make it feel soft because it is going to be concrete. So I was worried about the inherent qualities of that feeling a little bit colder potentially. In regards to the wall performance, our value is very clear of like something that we could get a really high performing part of that. But I was also curious because, we're located in Southern California and providing shade over windows or on the structure is pretty typical and something that I wanted to explore. So the form for this resulted in something like this. I'll circle back to the shade idea, is that typical canopy is like this, and I was curious about, can we just continue that form to get to that point and have it just one monolithic part? Because not only, I didn't want to explore at this time like a window opening below it, but there still would be some sustainability in regards to lack of heat hitting the surface even with that canopy here at this corner. So that's what this is indicating, is that we push it to a 1/6 canopy or the overhang for this test. And then otherwise these are the other elevations. I also just wanted to kind of play with just making it undulate. So the floor plan, I picked it to be just limited to 120 square feet because where it was being located didn't need any permits. The end use of it actually is going to be a sauna. which is great because of the thermal properties and the fact that part of it was I wanted to keep down costs by not having too many like windows and doors. And so that ended up being perfect. What I dashed in here was future built-ins that I never got to get to design. An example here is on the right of you can really start to play with cutouts while you're printing and printing. So that is a potential. Another aspect that we were going to look into was actually printing the sauna, like the fireplace aspect of it, because you can start to print fixtures. So globally, stepping back and looking at the flow plan, what was also a driver is that we had to fit it on a truck. So the truck is limited to 8 feet in any direction. So the shape of it was cutting it, literally printing it by its corners so that that piece can be less than 5,000 pounds and then lifted and put on a truck. And then all you got to do whenever you put it on site is just smash it all together. I will add to that, these slits here where we had to chop it off at 8 feet, we're going to leave a little bit of a gap so you get a slit of a window. So breaking down the aesthetics a little bit more too is that I felt like color could really bring some warmth to it. And so these were some examples of like, do we go on this end or do we want to go to this end? And so these were some color studies in relationship to the site to see what would work. Some talking about cost savings in regards to the wall type is that I think about this plaster wall that's pretty typically built in single family in Los Angeles, and it's pretty trade intensive between the multiple layers of plaster on the exterior, the water, 2 layers of waterproofing, the stud wall, and then all the finishes applied to the interior with the drywall paint. So this middle one is what the images soon to come will show, and what I call it's pretty much a one and done. You end up getting easily an R30 value, and that's including the insulation in the middle. And this one you can add color or not. And this is a well-performing wall. The one on the left is the one that the images are showing the one in the middle, but I want to get to the one on the left where we finish it with an interior plaster finish and an exterior plaster finish. And that still too is pretty low time involvement because we were able to even do a little test plaster finish on one even the day after. So cost was very important. And so I put on the contractor's hat for a second and line items all the things that would go into the final product of this. And this is including the foundation work, all of the labor for, trenching, digging, all the finishes of the pretty much a door, window, and then 2 window slits, the interior, exterior plaster, machine rentals, the truck rentals. So I wanted to try to be as specific as possible to be as accurate. Okay, jumping into the fabrication aspect. So this is, I wanted to show this image to show the gantry system of how it was built and that it's in the warehouse. This is the pallet that it was printed on. So just to show that process. This is the wall type that we were just kind of examining too, is that it's just these 2 fat beads that it is laid down, and then you're able to put in any structural that you need. And wherever you don't need structural is going to be that insulation. What we did at some of these edges where we wanted those window slits is that we carved out a notch so that we could even recess the windows so that we get more of a frameless look. So this is some of the starting to get to the final product images of that's that window slit in perspective. And then this is also on the left showing some of the color studies that we did. We wanted to explore more, but this is what we had. And I think it's an interesting start. So another aspect that I wanted to explore was not a smooth concrete finish, because I wanted to see like how rough can we get it to be extruded out in order to break down those horizontal lines that are can be typical with a smooth nozzle. So that's what this is showing, is that we made this pretty jagged to get this as a result. What I'm also interested in is the idea of, can this eliminate the wire mesh that you need to apply plaster, because this is that rough surface. What I don't know at this moment is for waterproofing and drainage, if this is enough as a drainage board, or if that will be a problem down the road. So these are just some finishing shots of some of the qualities that you get from the tight corners. We were able to learn from this and then change it. At this moment, I was having to take out material in order to have a smoother finish, but we adjusted that for the other pieces. So for that cantilever aspect, we were able to kind of engineer this idea of like, it is risk to print with a water, there's water in this, well, the cementitious material, that there's a risk of printing it with a cantilever. So what felt safer at the moment is that we can print some wider at the base and go up, and then just flip the block in place. So that ended up working out fine, and we didn't have any prints that failed. And that the block on the left is right side up. So this is it of the final 4 products that will be then shipped, picked up with the forklift, shipped on site, and then installed. And so super exciting to see. Okay, some takeaways that I had. I think it's definitely another tool in our tool chest as an architect whenever we're in the preliminary design phases of figuring out, is this an appropriate structural system or not? Something interesting that came up later whenever I was working through it is copyrights. Having a specific copyright agreement will be important, because I'm literally delivering the 3D model as the product that's being printed. And so then that person has access to duplicate that as many times as they want, unless I get it in writing that I own the copyright. One, the kind of the technological access to me is difficult, because I had access to it, but whenever I was searching for, 3D printers that are closer to the Los Angeles area, I haven't been super successful of finding that many that are very accessible, like the availability of going to like Home Depot, that's so close to everyone. So as of right now, that's kind of the biggest zinger to me at this point. And affordability, at the end of it all, I did a summary of the receipts that I had, and it ended up being around 150 square feet, because of I mean, it's just you're using less material. There's not a lot of waste. Anybody can be hired to be kind of on site to help you. Like I was I could do everything, and I don't have any like major construction training. So that sans obviously being the computer operator of like putting it in. But even then, the technology isn't that different from using a desktop 3D printer. So it's very interesting to me that it is very affordable. So in summary of this, it made me kind of reflect upon what could the future look like. And it made me think back to some of the dreams that I had at the beginning of like, is there something that is that sweet spot between construction, design, and price? And I think that there is a lot of promise in the future for this to be the answer to that. Because something that is a personal, like, principle or value to me is that I really think that design should be affordable for everyone, and that it's about the quality of living that we have. And I think that this could be a game changer for that being available to more families and people in the Los Angeles area and nationwide. What I also thought was super cool was like, I love the idea, just because California would be so hot, of the idea of like, you can make this so thermally strong. of pumping up your walls at very little cost. You're compared to a concrete wall that's solid, all you're adding is just an extrusion of the line here. I think that's also potentially interesting, and I'm going to go to the image on the right here of like there are becoming manufactured options of these smaller 3D printers, and all that turns it to the process is kind of a kit of parts, just breaking up the wall more and working on like what are the connection and just working with, I'm assuming you're structural engineer of like how that would be, but I just feel like the economics of it has to get to kind of where the desktop 3D printer is. They're so cheap that everyone has one. This needs to be cheap so that every contractor has one. Even I could see architecture offices, or I'm interested in like being like, how can I get dangerous with having something like this and just building it in blocks? I think it's super interesting to think about the future of how this can change the way that we design, because there was a real potential that I never got to explore of all these built-ins, because you can, I printed this way, print something on the ground like this and then prop it up. There's tons of potential for print built-ins of like a CMU block wall or a breeze wall, I should say, something kind of like this as well. There's a huge potential to me of what if these short-term housing developments kind of come up in a matter of months, and they can be something that's, I could also see there being all these crazy built-ins and stuff in it. I can just see it visually being different is what I'm trying to articulate. It can be dangerous too of like these ADUs popping up in a short amount of time. And again, I think, it brings a lot of value and cost savings to single family residential, and seeing how, like the base level of design can be really pushed, more, because we're not having this kind of eliminates form work and can change the process of how we're like building. So just kind of like step back and think about it globally, not only if I'm thinking about design, but I really think that there's a huge potential for whatever economic status you're at, that this will provide cost savings and can provide way more cost effective housing for the needs that we have. And I think it's just a matter of hopefully time before we get to that point where these machines are readily available for architects, homeowners, and contractors to really use. So I will leave that hopefully at a high note. And I look forward to talking to anybody that would love to talk to me about it. So thank you and bye.